Hello, I'm Bill, and springtime is here and it's time to start the home repair projects. What I'm going to do today is repair this garden gate. The garden gate has begun to look a little worse for wear, with some rusting around the bolts and screws. This spindle right here that's rotted away. And I pulled the gate off with the intention of throwing it away and building some kind of new gate. But as I looked at this gate, it's really very sound. The only damage on the gate is around the fastener holes. It's made out of redwood and it really has no other defects in it. So I've decided I'm going to strip it of the finishes, resand it and surface it. All of that I think will be easier and cheaper than building a new gate. So that's the project. The bolt holes are severely damaged. You can see how the material deteriorated around the rusting bolts. I'm going to attempt to plug these holes in the wood with some epoxy resin and see if that's good enough for reattaching the fasteners. I'm going to reinstall the hinges in the same place because they are currently installed in the stiles, and that's the logical place for them to be installed on this gate. I've scraped all the paint off of one side of the gate. The other side I decided not to scrape the paint from because the paint was on there very sound. It wasn't peeling or chipping, so the other side I just sanded. But I must work on those holes now. You can see that the gate is made from some really nice redwood. It was really premium stuff for a nice deck someone had. You see right here the color of the wood. It's very nice clear redwood and it's held up excellently through the years, except for around the fastener holes. I've got to clean out the material around these holes, and I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet, whether I'm going to drill out a big chunk or just file out some. So we'll just start with a rasp and see how much material I need to remove to get to clean wood. Alright, I've cleaned out the holes. A couple of them have gotten pretty large, but I'm going to stick with my original plan of filling them with epoxy. And if that doesn't work, I can always drill them out later. I'm going to pour the epoxy right into the holes, and I think I'll pour it from the other side because that's where the worst damage is. So I'm going to seal this side with painter's tape. This will form the bottom of the epoxy cast. There you can see the tape. This will block the resin from dripping through on this side, and I'm going to pour it from this side. So I'll fill these holes with epoxy, and I'll give it probably 24 hours to set up. You may notice I'm just working on a workmate here and a couple of sawhorses. Unfortunately, this time of year we have so many thunderstorms, I have to put up my shop. So there's my workbench, and I've had to put that up for the part of the spring until the thunderstorms pass. And if you've seen some of my other videos, you saw the thunderstorm or the hailstorm that hit my house several months ago, and in fact I ended up buying a new roof because of the damage. So it's just one of the hazards of living in Tornado Alley, but wouldn't live anywhere else. I'm going to mix the epoxy resin now, and I really have no idea how much resin I'm going to need, so I'm just going to mix too much. Mix is 2 to 1. Okay, by my count, that's 2 to 1. All the instructions on this are mix it until you think it's well mixed, and then mix it some more. Okay, I think that does it. It's a little messier than I anticipated. All the holes are now filled. We'll let it cure for 24 hours and we'll see if we've got a good repair. I'm going to reuse these hinges, so I'm going to clean the rust off and repaint them. Going to put a little Rust-Oleum primer on it. I finished casting the epoxy in the old bolt holes. Took a lot more epoxy than I thought it was going to take because the holes had rusted out quite a bit. You might be able to see, you can see the epoxy filling the holes. Some of the holes, like this one, was quite substantial, and I have a complete 3 inches of epoxy there. So we'll see how that drills and cuts and so forth. I did have one little problem. I used this blue tape to seal the backs of the holes when I poured the epoxy in. And the first time I did it, the epoxy seems to just have loosened the tape and all the epoxy ran out into little puddles on my work surface. So, although when it did that, it did seal the tape well enough that I was able to pour the epoxy a second time. Now I have to remove the tape. This may be a challenge because some of it is epoxied onto the door now. And we'll see what happens. I may have to scrape it off with a chisel. Or, oh, I don't know. Look at that. Came right off. I was expecting a big challenge here, but it looks like the epoxy did not adhere to the tape. Here's the Epoxy Repair, and it did pretty well. I think that's going to work. I think it'll be rough enough to hold paint. As I was working the epoxy, sanding it and peeling off the tape, I did determine that the epoxy is not real tough. I'm going to use it in compression rather than tension. What that means is I'm not going to put a screw in there where threads are going to engage in the plastic. Instead, I'm going to drill completely through the plastic and use a bolt and a nut clamping it on either side, and that way the plastic stays in compression. I think it'll be a good repair. Now I'm going to repair the broken spindle. It would be rather difficult to drill this out and hit that hole exactly and line up with that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the symmetry. I'm going to leave it symmetric, but I'm going to cut this spindle out too. So now it'll still be symmetric. Gate will match the aesthetics that my customer expects. That would be my wife. There you go. Perfectly symmetrical. Going to trim the gate down to size now. It was about 5/16 too big. So I'm going to use the router, and I have bolted this guide strip on the side of the gate, and the distance between this guide fence here and the edge of this board is the exact distance between the edge of the router and the bit. So I'm going to run this along here, and I'll probably cut it in about 3 passes. Well, I didn't cut off quite enough with the router. The brick wall was irregular and there was a brick sticking out that interferes, and so I'm going to have to cut off a little bit more. I'm just going to try to bandsaw this off. Well, that worked well enough. In the end, the hand tools were a lot faster than setting up the router. The gate is painted now, and I have mounted the hinges. I'm going to mount them to the gate first, and this is the board that I'm going to mount to the bricks. And I thought I would drill and mount that after I get this attached to the bricks, because I'm not sure how precise I can align that. I'm going to mount this board to the bricks. The holes were already drilled in the wall, so I put these wooden pegs in it with a little marker ink on it and tried to mark the point on the board where the holes should be drilled. So now we'll see how well that turned out. I know the top one will go in. It's the bottom one that's going to be the tricky one. It looks like I missed by a little bit, so I'm going to turn the camera off and be back to you in a minute. Alright, I made a little adjustment to the bottom hole, and it fits now. Comes on there. Perfect. Next thing is just to mount the gate, and we'll be done. I've got the gate in the opening now, and you notice I put it up on some wedge blocks to hold it level while I was lining the hinges. So you see there a couple of wedges, and on this side a couple of wedges, and that holds the gate in place. And I drill some holes with a Vicks bit to start the screws. Alright, that's the last screws. Let's see how it swings. There you go. It swings open. It won't pass through the opening. It'll have a latch right here that stops it. And that's the last piece. There it is, a revitalized garden gate. Saves me making a new one completely. And I'll finish painting it, and that's done.